Hello. So, earlier today, we uploaded my top 10 anime of 2019, and with that, we've finished off 2019 list videos, which means we're finally into the real list video territory when we're going to talk about the decade, the entire decade. So I thought before I started launching those, don't expect any too soon. I'm still working on the slides and such for all of them, but before that, I thought we would have a little bit of meta discussion on these lists. So let's talk about some of the opportunities of the decade ending and being able to make these lists. I really wanted to go hard on these. I really wanted to take them seriously, to put a lot of work into coming up with the lists themselves and coming up with explanations of why I liked all the things on there. Because you can only make these lists once every 10 years. I won't be able to do this again until 2029. Like, what? Can you even conceive of such a year? That'll be the next time that you can talk about the decade like this. Such drastic changes happen between these snapshots of your lives. 10 years is a pretty major period for any individual. Your entire lifestyle, your entire belief systems, your relationships, all of these things can drastically change between these 2 points. And I think taking a snapshot of the things you really love at those times, the pieces of media that have stuck with you most through these periods, is an amazing way to kind of have these snapshots of who you were as a person in these 10-year intervals. And you can only make so many of these. It's not like you can do it an unlimited number of times. We're only going to see the end of, what, like 7 or so decades in our adulthood? There's kind of a minimum age to be able to working on stuff like this, and even if you live a rich old life, at some point you're going to get too senile or too decrepit or whatever to be slaving away on YouTube videos all day. So I'm guessing at most I can make 7 end of decade videos with any sort of like meaningful weight behind them. So I want to make them count. The window of 10 years, I think, is a great size, that it's big enough that it gives lots of weight, that it's really significant to be talking about something in the context of it being the best of a decade, but it's still plausible. It's not an outrageous amount of time to be looking at. It's not like you can't feel like you're getting a sense of what that medium was like across the decade. It's hard. It's really hard to feel confident about that. And you're never going to be able to do it perfectly. You're never going to be able to see or hear or read everything, of course, unfortunately. But it feels plausible. It feels plausible that you can get it to a point where you're satisfied with it. But there are some challenges. As I said, 10 years is still a long time. It's going to be really hard to kind of try to sum up all of the media that's been released during that span. And as I said, you're never going to be perfectly satisfied. It's just plausible that you'll get it to some point where you're like, I'm feeling okay with this. It's really hard to make sensible comparisons across such a large expanse, too. The kind of cultural context for everything in 2010 and 2019 is so radically different that to say something that came out in one year is better or worse than something that came out in the other year kind of feels a little nonsensical. But you do your best. And how do you honor yourself through that whole period? Do you kind of only consider your tastes now at the end of 2019? Do you consider how you were throughout all of those years? If there's something that you really liked around the start of the decade, but now it's kind of whatever, would you still include it to kind of honor yourself back then? I don't think there's any one good answer, because even if you're not super into that media now, you're probably still into the feelings you had about it back at that time. So it's not really easy to draw a line between those two experiences. And man, is this timing terrible for me. I really wish the end of the decade had been, like in June or something. Oh man, just so much stuff going on in my life. Mostly good things, honestly, mostly good things. I started a new job. I'm really enjoying the job. I really want to make it work, so I'm putting quite a lot of effort into that. It takes up a lot of my time. They're flying me out to San Francisco for a week soon, so that's like a whole week. I'm not going to be able to make videos from February 2nd to February 9th. Oh well. Just all sorts of things in my personal life are happening. Again, most of them good, but all of them very occupying, all of them very like mentally draining, really kind of taking over my life. So it's not a good time to have a project like this where I have to just kind of work at it on my own initiative, where I have to deliberately prioritize it over who knows how many other things I could conceivably be doing, just based on my own motivation. It's tough, and it's probably going to take a while, and these are going to come out at a slow trickle throughout the next few months. So, sorry. And I'm really sorry for the lack of videos in general. Manga videos especially, I know that the vast majority of my subscribers are here for those, and I haven't made any in like over a month now, probably closer to 2 months, which I feel terrible about. And there's such a huge backlog now that it's becoming more and more intimidating to kind of start the process of working through all of these weeks and weeks of chapters. It'll happen eventually. It's just again, it's all like priorities. It's all like having a block of time until your next commitment and having to choose, okay, I can just do one thing, or I can finally do nothing and just relax, which, you know, for your own sanity, you have to make that choice sometimes too. So, I don't know. I'm sorry, but I'm sure if you're a longtime fan of this channel, then you're used to these sorts of breaks and absences. So we'll get through it. There'll be a time of video prosperity again, I'm sure. So how much should I prioritize these? This is like another question I'm having. Like, I want to get them done close to the start of the year. That's like list season. That's when they're going to be kind of most relevant, I suppose. But at the same time, it's the previous decade. There's kind of like a timelessness to it. It's not like more years are going to be added or subtracted from the 2010s. So, you know, should I be working on these instead of making manga videos? I don't know. Should I be working on these instead of going to the gym or something? I don't know. I really am just kind of letting myself do what I feel like I'm doing, do what I feel like doing in the moment. I can't really ask for more than that. Like, I'm only going to be able to do what I want to do. But it's a tough question. Plus, all of the other challenges that apply when you're making a list apply here even more so. Like, should these lists be just about my personal taste? Or if there's something that I can really appreciate that I think is really great, but it never really personally hit me, should I still put it on this list? Like, if I still consider it, you know, one of the best whatever of the decades, it's just not one of my favorite whatever of the decades, does it deserve a spot? It's a tough question to answer. How far should you try to reach just for the list? Like, if I'm hearing about something that's making a lot of other lists, that has a lot of critical acclaim, should I go out of my way to listen to it just so I don't leave it off of my list? Even if maybe I don't have any other motivation to listen to it or read it or whatever, for its own sake? I don't know. Like, how much should I be aiming for this sense of completeness? I don't know. Should I be aiming for just kind of the general timeless appeal of something? Or is it good to kind of think about how it represents like a cultural moment? How important it is in the context of now, of the place it was made, of the time it was made, of society as it stands when it released. Something that maybe years down the line won't resonate as deeply because those circumstances have changed, or at least it will require kind of more of a general history to build up that context. Does that make it kind of less valuable? I don't know. Should you have like the true list, like an honest representation of all your favorites and stuff, or should it be more of an interesting list, something that kind of surprises the reader, watcher, whatever, that is much more kind of rich in its choices? Like, you know, should you intentionally make it more diverse? Like limit yourself to only so many things by a certain artist or genre or studio or whatever? Should you go out of your way to highlight obscure things that might not make many lists, but that you personally know is worthy of more attention than it gets? Should you try to make like a statement with positioning that honestly you would have this more famous album higher, but because you want to show that there's something underrated about another album, you invert the typical ordering of them? Sorts of questions. It's tough. It's tough. I don't know. And on top of those like typical list challenges, I had some additional considerations for these ones. First off, how should I split these up into videos? This is one where I haven't made up my mind yet, so I welcome any feedback you have. Part of me wants to do these big lists where I have a lot of things to talk about and a lot of things to say about each and every one of them as just one gigantic video for kind of the performance art of it. And I would imagine like the album list video and stuff are going to be probably multiple hours long of just talking. And the appeal there is mostly in that it's kind of a crazy thing to do. And I like the idea of having this huge, gigantic, crazy video that probably no one in their right mind would watch. But exactly, no one in the right mind would watch something that long. And probably I would enjoy making the videos more if I split them up and I took breaks and I did like 10 entries at a time. Probably a lot more people would watch them, etc., etc. But I don't know. It's like I want to prove I can do it. The big marathon list discussion going on for hours and hours, album after album after album, I think would really fill my soul with a sense of accomplishment. So I'm split. I'm split on splitting. What do I do? This is another very practical consideration. So for some mediums, like manga and anime, TV series, stuff like that, will have the same series or the same franchise that spans multiple years. But if they started in like 2009 and went into the 2010s, should that count? Do they have to start during the decade? Do they just have to overlap with the decade at all? Should there be some like majority rule? The most of it had to be in this decade? I don't know. I went back and forth on this a lot. I kind of looked at what other lists were doing and such. I decided, after kind of considering all these arguments for both sides, most sites seem to do the latter. As long as it overlapped with the 2010s, it was good for inclusion. But I'm going to go with the former. I think I'm only going to talk about things that entirely took place within this decade, within the 2010s, that is. And mostly because that gives me more opportunities to talk about more different things later if I made like an all-time list or something like that. Or if I made a list about the 2000s, which I might do at some point. That seems like a lot of fun. Fun. That's a lot of work. But yeah, I don't know. It seems a little unfair because shows that like ran right at the end of 2009, half of it is in 2009, half of it is in 2010, won't qualify for the 2010 list. Probably, I don't know how they would qualify for the 2000s list. I don't know. It's flawed. Either way, there's kind of like unsatisfying things about the decision, but I'm going to stick with this. Should I have any limitations on the repetition of artists, etc.? I talked about this in the challenges page. This is, again, something that I saw a lot of other sites doing just for the sake of talking about more diverse things, but I decided no. I'm going to stick more on the idea of my true, honest, personal tastes. Go ahead and cancel me. Go ahead and say there's way too many of this artist or this genre or whatever. I don't care. This is what I genuinely like. This is what I'm most excited to talk about. So that's fine. So what mediums should I cover? This is, of course, a very big practical question. And how many should I try to include for each medium? So I've mostly settled on this. So let's talk about the lists themselves, the lists I'm planning on making. We're going to do the top 50 albums. At first, I wanted to do the top 100 albums. At some point, I even considered doing the top 200 albums because that's what Pitchfork did and that's what Anthony Fantano did. But it's just too crazy. For the extent that I want to talk about each and every one of them, it just was way too crazy. So we're settling at 50. I think 50 is reasonable. Likewise, I want to do the top 50 songs. My plan is to choose songs that are exclusive of the albums I chose. This is kind of like a weird personal rule, and it goes against what I was saying about like the true, honest representation of what I personally like. But I think it would be way more interesting this way. So yeah, the songs list will only have songs that don't appear on any of the albums in the albums list. But the way I'm doing is I'm giving full consideration to the albums first, not even considering this rule, and then the songs list, which is much less finalized, I'm just going to be making it with that in mind. So the albums list is much more like true and real. It's kind of more important to me. And then the songs list is like 50 songs that I really, really like that I want to talk about that, for whatever reason, don't appear on those albums. Okay. Top 20 anime, of course. Very, very excited to share this with you. Full of absolute bangers, of course. Top 20 movies. This can include anime movies. Mostly it's not anime movies, but there's some anime on there. If all you care about is anime, don't worry. Top 20 Western TV shows. So anything that's not anime, not necessarily live action, but not Japanese animation. Top 20 video games. This one was really hard to put together just because of the drastically different way I go about consuming different games. Like there's some games that I play like every day for months and months and months and take very seriously and compete in and make friends through. And then there's other games that I just play through once and really enjoy them and have this like rich experience, much more analogous to other forms of media. It's like, how do I compare those two things? Can you meaningfully compare kind of like a competitive activity and an artistic experience? I don't know, but we're gonna try. Top 10 books. I'm only doing 10 books. Books more than any other medium I don't really keep up with. I'm mostly reading like very old things, classics of the works. So when I put together all of the books I had read from this decade in the last decade, there was only like 20-ish. So it seemed crazy to just put like all of them on a list. So I'm only doing top 10. But it's an interesting list. An interesting mix emerged. And this also includes Western graphic novels, but it does not include manga. For our grand finale, we're going to be talking about the top 20 manga that started in the last decade. Oh man, this list isn't really finalized yet. It's really, really hard to compare against different genres, to things that only ran for a few volumes but left a deep, deep impact with every chapter, to like a shonen series that I've read for years and years and years that has taken me through this whole roller coaster of emotions. How do you compare those things? I have no idea. Yeah, this one's going to be tough. This one's going to be very tough. And manga, I think, more than any other medium, I can appreciate how little I've read. Like, something like albums. I know that there's so much music I don't listen to. There's so many albums coming out every single day. But most of it I can feel kind of dismissive of, as bad as that sounds. That I know it just won't interest me or it won't be very good. And so I can kind of feel like, well, of the stuff that I could like, I'm probably already liking a decent amount of it at least. But with manga, where my tastes are so varied, and I find myself able to appreciate at least something from almost every series I look at, where the medium itself is so enthralling to me, just in kind of how it's structured and how it's produced. I think of the endless shelves in Japan of series I hadn't even heard of. I think of the top-rated series on MangaDex and all the ones I haven't even tried. And, it just humbles me. It feels like what I'm doing is basically just taking a tiny little eyedropper into the pool of manga and pulling it out, and then sorting the molecules left in there when there's this gigantic expansive sea around me. So all I can say is that we're going to do our best, and we're going to try to read as much manga as humanly possible throughout our entire lives. I don't know, I'm using the we here. This is what I'm going to do. You don't have to do that. But that's what I'm going to do because I love manga so much. Okay. Let's talk about a bit of lists that I considered, but ultimately abandoned at some stage. Some top N YouTube channels. I thought this could be a lot of fun. My favorite YouTube channels that started in the 2010s, but I don't know. It was just really hard to put together. I felt like there were so many I was forgetting. really hard, again, to compare across different sorts of mediums of content. I don't know. When I talk about it, I'm like, no, I want to do that. It wouldn't be that hard. I want to do that. Likewise, top-end YouTube videos. This would be even harder. I don't even know how I'd begin to like research this. It used to be that I actually had a long, long list of YouTube videos I liked. And that if you went to my website on Kiitsta.com, it would show you a random one of those videos. But for whatever reason, I just stopped doing that. I really regret that I stopped doing that, because there's so many videos I've seen between when I was doing that and now that I'm sure I would have loved to see again that have now been totally forgotten by me. Alas. So this one feels very unfeasible. This one I would have to require some like hacker level understanding of the universe to be able to start putting together top end like articles, just like articles I've read in magazines or on the internet that really affected me, that really spoke to me, that taught me a lot, thought were well written, whatever. That would be cool, but again, it's not like I have some sort of database of this content. It's not like I'm doing seasonal article reviews. That'd be kind of cool though. So I don't know how I would begin to do it. Top end episodes of anime or TV in the way that I'm doing songs and albums. I thought I could do the same for taking individual episodes of TV shows and probably in a separate list anime. I could even do the same thing where that's exclusive of a series list, like particular episodes I really liked of series that didn't make the list. Could be cool. A lot of work though to go through all of that to try to figure it out. So not happening. Likewise, top end chapters of manga, even harder. Where would I even begin? Oh my god. It's like I know if I made the effort, if I spent all of the hours scoring through all these series, really thinking about, okay, this is the chapter that really hit me. This is the chapter where this huge twist happens or whatever. I'm sure I would come up with eventually a list that I would be deeply gratified to myself for making. That would be like a very precious thing to me to have this list. So it's like I want to do it, but I don't know. It's I only have so much time. I only have so much energy. Or top end moments in my own life. This one, that just doesn't seem feasible. I talk about my life on this channel sometimes. We have like a few videos where I took a look at kind of my previous year, some highlights, some lowlights, some opportunities, some challenges, some struggles, some successes. And I like doing that, and I don't mind sharing kind of personal aspects of my life with people, but something like this feels, I don't know, it's a little too weird. Normal people don't do that. Normal people don't rank moments in their life like this. But, you know, privately, I think it's kind of a fun thing to reflect on. Even if you don't make like a formal list, just look back at the decade and be like, all right, what were some really, really good things that happened to me? So I'll probably do that as kind of a meditative exercise. Kind of going along with this, top end things that I created. So this could be YouTube videos, this could be fiction writing, nonfiction writing, other like artistic projects, paintings, drawings, poems, whatever. I do just a lot of stuff. Just keep throwing things out there for my own amusement. And sometimes I'm like, damn, I did a good job. I'm like actually pretty happy with this thing I wrote, with this video I recorded, whatever like that. So it'd be kind of cool to kind of honor this, to bring it to the foreground, but very egotistical. Very, this is even more egotistical to say, but what would make me happy is if someone else made this list. But I think if I tried to make it myself, it would just make me feel like so weird, so terrible. So probably not going to happen. And then this one, the super meta list. We talked about this a bit before. I think this would actually be really cool. But what I realized is I wouldn't want it to just be like top end lists I've seen on the internet that are like most similar to my own taste. I would really want it to be about, you know, kind of how bold they were in their choices, how enlightening the list were, how well reasoned their justifications for putting things on there were. really talk about the qualities of it as a list itself, and not just like, I like this album, they like this album, 10 points. And then it started seeming like actually like a very difficult project, a very interesting project, but one where I would actually have to put a lot of effort into it. And if I was going to do that, I'd probably just want to do one of these other lists instead. The fact is I haven't even finished the lists on the previous page, so those are even higher priority. So I really don't think this one's going to happen, unfortunately, even though I think it's a pretty funny idea. Okay, that's it. I was hoping this would be a quick discussion, but I guess that's not the way of this channel. 25 minutes of talking about lists makes you wonder how long the lists themselves will be, but you're going to have to wait and see. Bye-bye.